To Kill a Mockingbird, Chapter 3. I was angry at Walter Cunningham for getting me into trouble with Miss Caroline. I wrestled with him and pushed his face into the ground when Jim came over. Jim tells me to stop and invites Walter over to our house for lunch. On the way to the Finch's house, we ran past the Radley house. Walter informs Jim that he almost died because he ate the pecans from the tree. The children think that Boo poisons the nuts. During lunch, Walter talks with Atticus. He says he has trouble passing the first grade because he has to leave school every spring to help on the farm. While eating lunch, Walter asks for molasses and pours it all over his food. I asked him what crazy thing was he doing, and Calpurnia told me to come into the kitchen. I told her that he probably would have poured the molasses into his milk if I didn't stop him. Calpurnia says that no matter whether you think you are better than another, you don't make fun of them while they are a guest in your house. I thought to myself that I would get her, and that she'd be sorry. Jim and Walter went back to school ahead of me, and I told Atticus he should have packed her off. Atticus says that he will do no such thing, and that Calpurnia is valuable to the family, and that I should listen to what Cal says. I returned to school for the afternoon session. During this part of the day, I watched while Miss Caroline tried to control a student named Burris Ewell. Miss Caroline's attention goes to Burris because she notices something crawling in his hair. It's lice. Burris is unaffected by the commotion he has caused. Miss Caroline naively tells Burris to go home and wash his hair. Burris informs her that he only comes to the first day anyway, just to please the truancy lady. After the first day, he never comes back. None of the Ewells still in school come but for the first day. Burris has been in the first grade for 3 years now. Miss Caroline learns that Burris's mother is dead, and his father is a low-class white man who drinks a lot. Miss Caroline tries to get Burris to sit back down, but he gets angry and mean. Little Chuck, another student in the class, helps Miss Caroline and tells Burris to go home menacingly. Burris made Miss Caroline cry, and after Burris left, we all tried to comfort her. After school let out, we went home and made sure to run past the Radleys' house. We met Atticus when he got home from work. Calpurnia had made a special treat of mine for dinner, and I was sure that Calpurnia had seen her errors in the way she treated me at lunch. That night, Atticus asked me if I was ready to read with him. I got real uncomfortable. Atticus noticed that something was bothering me, so he asked me what was wrong. I told him all that had happened in the day, and even the part about Miss Caroline saying that he had taught me all wrong, so we couldn't read together any more. I told Atticus that I didn't want to go to school anymore. Atticus tries to interpret some of the confusing episodes of the day for me. He says, "If you can learn a simple trick, Scout, you'll get along a lot better with all kinds of folks. You never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view, until you climb into his skin and walk around in it." I learned that the Cunninghams are poor but honest people, and that Miss Caroline made some honest mistakes. We couldn't expect her to have learned all the ways of Maycomb in one day. On the conversation of the Ewells, Atticus says that the law bends a little for them. The people allow them certain privileges by being a Ewell and living in their situation. They don't have to go to school, and Mr. Bob Ewell, the father, is permitted to hunt and trap animals out of season. He's allowed to do this because he spends all of his welfare money on whiskey, and his children are hungry. The food that he hunts goes to feeding his children so nobody would say that he can't hunt even if it's out of season. Atticus says that you can't punish the children for the father's faults. Atticus and I made a compromise. If I agreed to go to school, then we could continue reading together each night, but we better keep it a secret. Chapter 4. My school year went on pretty uneventfully. One day, while walking home alone, I ran past the Radleys' house as I normally do. This time, however, something caught my eye. I took a deep breath, turned around, and went back. Next to the Radley house, there were 2 tall oak trees. One of the trees had a knothole, and there was some shiny tinfoil sticking out of it. I stuck my hand in the knothole and pulled out 2 pieces of chewing gum, Wrigley's Double Mint. I quickly snatched it up and ran home, even though I wanted to cram it into my mouth. Once I got to the porch, I inspected my find. I sniffed it and licked it, and then when I didn't die, I put the gum in my mouth. Jim came home and wondered where I got the gum. I finally told him that I found it in the Radley's tree. Jim yells, "Spit it out right now. Don't you know you're not supposed to even touch the trees over there? You'll get killed if you do." And I obeyed. Summer was on the way, which was our favorite season. It also meant that Dill was on his way. On the last day of school, we were let out early. As Jim and I walked past the Radley's oak trees, I saw shiny tinfoil again in the knothole. We both ran over, grabbed the prize, and hurried home to examine it. It was a small jewelry box covered in tinfoil wrappers. Inside the box were 2 Indian head pennies that were really old. Since this was pretty special, I began to think that this knothole might be someone's special hiding place. We tried to think of who walked that way and who might be using this as their hiding spot. We didn't know if we should keep them or put them back. Jim suggested that we keep them until school starts and then ask everyone if they're theirs. I noticed Jim looking back at the Radley's house for a long time and seemed to be real thoughtful. Dill finally arrives. Miss Rachel picks him up and we met up with him a little later. Dill suggested we picking up where they left off play acting, but I'm tired of those. I thought it would be fun to roll in the tire. "I'm first," I announced. I folded myself in the tire, and Jim pushed me hard down the sidewalk. I was getting dizzy and couldn't get it to stop because it was going so fast. I heard Jim yelling behind me. All of a sudden, I bumped into something and I stopped. I lay on the cement for a while and hear Jim's voice. "Scout, get away from here. Come on." I opened my eyes and realized I was in front of the Radley steps. Jim came to get me and panicked. We both scurried out of there without the tire. Jim and I argued about who should go back and get the tire. Jim scowled and went back for it. He told me I was acting like a girl, and there was nothing to it. Calpurnia called us in for some lemonade. As we enjoyed our lemonade, Jim decided that we should play Boo Radley. What he meant was that we would play acting like using the Radleys as our characters. All throughout the summer, we perfected our act. We added dialogue and made it long. One day when we were rehearsing one act, Atticus watched us. He told us that he hoped we were not play acting about the Radleys. Jim and I argued over whether or not we should continue acting this out, since Atticus told us not to. Atticus seeing us do this play acting was the first reason I wanted to stop doing this. The second reason had to do with what happened earlier that day. After I had rolled into the Radleys' yard, I heard not only Jim's voice yelling, but also another sound. It was a soft sound. Someone inside of the house was laughing.